Hey guys, welcome to the Introvert Dating Success Show, courtesy of introvertdatingsuccess.com. I'm your host, HarryWilmington, and today we're going to be answering a question from a guy that wants to know if his response to his girlfriend's question about what he would do if he found out that she cheated should be different, or if there was a different way to word it. And so I want to answer actually a few things in my response to this question. One of them is I want to go through his question and kind of stop in bits and parts here and, what his answer was to her. But also I want to talk about this fear that guys have that if a woman responds to them in a negative way, or he says something that she disagrees with, that it's the end of the world and that he needs to change his stance. Because this will happen quite often in your relationship, whereby you two will have a conversation about something and there will be a disagreement of points or a different opinion or perspective on a certain thing. And a lot of guys get this fear whereby if the woman disagrees and starts throwing a fit and yelling or starts crying or whatever, he fears as though it means that she's going to leave him, that she doesn't trust him anymore, or that his answer was wrong. And I need you guys to get out of that fearful mind frame that if you have a disagreeing point that you need to change up or that you're wrong, because part of being a man is being able to have certain principles and boundaries set for yourself. And when a woman comes against those boundaries, sometimes she's going to push at them to see if you really actually have that as a solid standing boundary, or if you're going to bend and fold because of her crying or whatever, and she's going to be able to switch you up. And a lot of guys will do that thinking that'll keep the peace, but what it actually does to the woman is it can make her fear a lot more being with you, because she needs you to have certain boundaries and stances in place that you're not going to bend for anybody, whether it's her, your guys' eventual kids, the world at large. Like, do you have principles already set up for yourself that you say you're not going to bend on? And you're going to say to her, yes, you do, but she's not going to know that unless she tests them out. Okay. So I think this is the perfect example of what this guy's going through. And hopefully you'll be able to hear my answers to this guy and look at whatever you're going through with your own relationship or your own dating situation and see if maybe the woman you're dating has been doing that to you and whether or not you've been passing or failing those tests. All right. So let's go ahead and get into his message. So he says, I'm 26. I've been with my girlfriend. She's 28 for 5 years. She asked me a question asking me what I would do if she cheated on me. And I told her I would break up with her, block her, get her eviction notice, and would do most stuff so I'm in no contact with her ever. So that was his main answer. I will say this. You don't have to go that deep with it. Like, you don't need to make it sound so devastatingly bad. You could just say something as simple as like, well, if that happened, I'd just be out. She'll probably be like, well, what do you mean? Oh, if you're going to cheat, I'm not going to stay around. I'll be out. That's as far as you have to necessarily to say it. You don't have to go into these dims like, I would separate and I would, make sure I get the dog in the breakup and I would kick you out of the house. Like, now you're adding a level of intensity to this for what's supposed to just be a casual conversation. So you ain't got to go that deep, but you can still let her know if you have the boundary of that, where it's like, hey, if you cheat, I'm not going to stick around. That's perfectly fine to be able to voice. Continuing. He says, she, after this answer, rephrased the question as if she would only do it once as a mistake. I told her my response would be the same. She asked me this question in a variety of ways, from drunken kissing to proper sex, and I told her I don't care about the capacity in which she cheats. If she does, I'll be done with her. So this is the part where she's asking these questions to see, well, how far is this boundary being drawn? Is it if I kiss another guy, I'm out? Is it if I have sex with them, I'm out? Like, what's the boundary? Because she's thinking maybe there's levels to this. Like, maybe if I just, flirted with a guy a little bit, then I'd still be able to stick around. And so recognize women will sometimes ask these questions and they're thinking that, okay, I'm going to see what this is. And there's going to be some point in there where I can get a little leeway or whatever. But again, if you are steadfast in your belief that anytime a woman cheats on you for whatever reason, you got to be out, you got to stick to that. And some women will ask those questions to see if you're going to waver from that because they want to see, they want to test your strength. They want to test. I did an episode earlier this week about that, about women trying to test your strength. This is one of those things. Are the principles you have going to be able to stand up against my scrutiny or against my questioning? Or are there going to be outliers that I can do where you change your mission? And you can't have that be a thing. You can't let her throw you off balance, okay? Also to the point, I had a friend back in the day, he used to be married to this woman and now he's divorced. But he said there were times where like she would be jealous of him because he would occasionally have lunch with female coworkers at his job. And he remembers one day coming home and she started asking him, hey, so like, are you eating lunch with so-and-so? Well, do you think that's appropriate? Well, why would you want to do that? Yada, yada, yada. She went through this whole litany of asking him why he would want to eat with this female coworker. And once she was done berating him, then she was like, oh, well, I have a male coworker that I eat with also. So the reason she was asking that was because she was feeling some kind of way about what she was doing, but she needed to see if he was doing the same thing first and make him feel guilty about it before she could be like, oh, and I'm doing the same thing. So also understand that sometimes when women are asking you questions, it could be because there's something going on that they're doing that they don't want to tell you about. But that whole thing of like guilty people will think that other people are doing the same thing to them. So you might want to look out for that. Now, I'm not saying that this woman is necessarily cheating on him in the moment, but it's the fact that it's curiously being brought up. This is where, as a guy, it's always good to ask questions. But I'll get into that a little bit more, okay? I want to get deeper into this message. So he says she was upset because she claims that if I cheated on her one time and it was a mistake, she would forgive me on the condition I promise never to do it again. So this is something that's like easy to say when it's not actually happening. But trust me, I can assure you that if you do it so much as even like tell a woman that you find her friend objectionably cuter, that incident, that phrase you said is going to stick in her mind long after the incident's happened. And she'll be bringing it up 1, 2, 3, 5 years later. Okay. So while she's saying she thinks she could forgive, again, the reality is it hasn't actually happened. So the theory of how she'd respond is a lot better than what would probably actually happen were you to actually cheat on her. So don't fall for these tactics when women are saying, oh, well, if you did the same thing that I'm asking you if you would do, that I would because theory is different from action. And if you know what you know, especially as an adult male, there are things that, your parents might have told you as a kid that you didn't get, that as an adult you've experienced. You're like, oh, this is actually different. So my response that I had when I was 15, I'd say if this thing happened to me, I'd respond this way. I'm now like 25 or 35 and this thing's happening and it's way different. Okay. So don't fall for that tactic from women ever. Continuing. He says on this, I told her she is definitely a bigger person than me. And I appreciate her being open to giving me a second chance, but that is not me. Correct answer. You don't need to change up your stance just because hers would be different in a situation. Continuing, he says, I will not compromise on this. She got visibly mad and said that if I truly loved her, I would let go of a mistake once. She said she is certain it will never happen, but it hurts knowing that I won't forgive her mistake. I think my boundary is very reasonable. I don't ask for much other than to not cheat and use violence. Any help to figure this out, or maybe a different perspective that might help me feel sympathy for one-off by mistake cheaters. All right. So again, this is one of those things whereby if this is the boundary you have set, you don't need to feel bad or wrong at all for that boundary, okay? So here's the thing. Like I said, this is an example where his girlfriend is clearly mad and upset in this particular conversation, okay? This does not mean this feeling is going to follow you for next days or weeks on end, okay? But recognize again, when you're in a conversation like this, part of the tactic that women will sometimes use, whether consciously or subconsciously, sometimes women just get overly emotional and then just subconsciously things take over and they start crying, they start yelling, this is that. However upset they get about it, that does not mean you were wrong. That does not mean that you need to change your mind, and it does not mean that your stance is invalid or is not one that is actually like worth what you put forth to it, okay? The reality is that, again, sometimes emotions will happen and they'll start crying, but you got to stay solid in your opinion. You got to stay solid in the things that you believe in. You have to stay solid in what you're telling her. So you can't go in this conversation and say, well, if you cheated, then you'd be out. And then a couple of days later be like, hey, babe, I'm sorry. So I was wrong. So, if you did cheat just one time, I would have a conversation about it, because you're looking weak and ultimately you lose. You're thinking that's what she wants. But sometimes women will bring up stuff because they need to feel a certain feeling. Like women, oftentimes, not all women, but a good portion of women have this thing of like wanting to feel a variety of emotions. If things are going too well for too long, inevitably something will come up whereby it allows her to suddenly rock the boat a little bit or to question you a little bit harder than she normally would on things to be able to have that hard-in discussion. Sometimes she wants to have a hard discussion with her man because she wants to feel the strength of her man pushing back against her. I've talked about that on the show. It sounds very dumb to us, but to women, it is the thing where if they haven't felt it for a while, they might just want to be able to feel that, and you're the guy that they're dating, so she got to feel it through you, okay? So do not think, again, that means that you are wrong in any way, shape, or form, okay? It's very, very important that you always stick to your guns on the things that you absolutely believe, okay? Now, with that said, I will also say this, is that when a woman comes to you and asks you these kinds of questions that look like they could actually start a fight, or these kind of opinion questions where it's like, hey, so, if I died, would you start dating somebody right away? Or if I cheated on you with somebody you didn't know, would you want to know about it, yada, yada, yada. These are situations where either there's really no good, correct answer, or the answer you give could be upsetting. And again, that's perfectly fine because you have to stick to your principles. But that said, there's another way to handle that you may not have considered, which is, do you have to actually answer her question? And the thing is that we as guys logically think if a question is being asked to us, there must be a logical answer we can give that's going to satisfy the other party. I have learned through my years of dating, sometimes that is not the case. And I've also learned sometimes women ask you questions just because they want banter. It does not mean that they necessarily want and or care for your answer, or that if you give an answer they don't like, that they actually were seeking that in the first place, okay? So what I found is that sometimes when these kind of questions are asked, your best tactic is to just ask her questions. So we'll use this as an example, okay? A woman comes to you and she asks you, hey, so hypothetically, if I were to ever cheat on you, if I cheated on you just one time, how would you react to that? You could give the answer this guy gives, say, I wouldn't like it and I'd be out. You could do that. That's totally perfectly well-crafted answer. Or you could start asking your own questions. For example, this with me, I'd have been like, so are you saying that you're cheating on me? She'd probably be like, well, no, I'm not cheating. I'm just saying if it were to happen, what would your response be? And I'd be like, well, is that something you're contemplating doing? No, babe, I love you to death. I'm just asking a question. I just want to know, if we're in that situation where for some reason there's a mistake, then I'd be like, well, then how would that mistake come up in the first place? Well, let's say, what if I was drunk somewhere and I start kissing a guy? Then I'd be like, well, A, why wouldn't I be in that place with you? And also, knowing that you could get drunk and make out with somebody, why would you go into some place where I'm not there and possibly drink to get to that state in the first place? So see, what am I doing now? Now I'm turning around the question to why is this a question you even had in your head in the first place? And then how are you seeing yourself in any scenario where the result would be you're cheating on me in the first place, to where I'd have to have a response to that? You see? So now I'm taking away the power of her question and put my own power on it to where now she's answering questions, okay? So let's say we get to the end of all that. She's like, okay, so, I'm asking questions to her. She's answering all these questions and we get to the bottom of it. It's like, okay, so, but all that, babe, yeah, but I still want to know, how would you feel about that? Then I'd be like, well, the situation hasn't happened yet, so I don't know. And now that's also an honest answer, because I could sit right here and say to her, well, if you cheated on me, then I'd feel hurt and devastated and I'd leave. Or I could be like, well, if you cheated, but it was because, I pushed you or I was mean towards you and you needed somebody else to console you, and then you did some stuff, then maybe, possibly. But the reality is, I don't know. I've not been in that situation with you, so I do not yet know what that response would be. So I'd be like, well, I don't know. We haven't crossed that bridge. Hopefully we won't have to, so we don't have to find out. Boom. Now I've given no concrete thing to her of what could happen, but I've also left the door open for anything could happen. And those are two very scary places to be, where you're not sure what the response would be, but you're making her imagine what the worst possible response could be, to where maybe she doesn't want to do it. Okay. So understand, you have avenues to go. You can give her your honest truth answer, or you can give her the thing where you ask a bunch of questions, or you can leave it open-ended. Hey, we don't know what's going to happen, but hey, you know what? Why don't we never find out in the first place? All right. So that's how you can handle that kind of question. Because again, just because a woman asks you a question doesn't mean you have to give her an answer, nor does it mean that you have to give her an answer that you think she's going to like. You should always stick to your guns and always stick to your principles, but also recognize that you also have the right not to answer stupid, silly questions that will sometimes get asked of you in a relationship. All right. So that's all I got for today's show. If you need help figuring out how to answer these kind of throwaway questions or things that are curveballs, because I'm very, very good at being able to see when curveballs are coming with women that I'm dating and being able to answer those questions or have those conversations to where they don't end up with blowout fights. But people are still respected. My opinions are respected, etc., etc. If you're having a problem with that, you can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com and sign up for a coaching call. Just click on the coaching tab. We can set you up with that today. Also go there to check out my various ebooks, audiobooks, and programs, all designed to help you date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. You can go there to sign up for my Introvert Dating Success Academy in particular, which will teach you the ins and outs of how to meet, greet, date, attract, land, and keep the woman of your dreams. You can also go there to get a free copy of my best-selling ebook and audiobook, No Girls For You, the ultimate guide to losing the girl of your dreams. Just sign up for my video newsletter and you'll get instant access to that today. Lastly, guys, I appreciate you guys' support on this show. If you want to show your support, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/HarryWilmington. You can also leave me a Cash App monetary donation at $HarryWilmington. And also, feel free to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any place that you see this podcast. I'd greatly appreciate a positive review. Helps me show up in the algorithm. All right? That's all we got for today, guys. I'm Harry Wilmington. I'm doing 25 of these shows in a row, so we're close to the end leading up to Christmas. On Christmas, it'll be my 300th episode. I'm very excited about that, so definitely tune in for these last few days. We're still doing more shows. I mean, I'm coming back next year. I'm going to take a couple weeks off to recharge and enjoy the holidays and my birthday, but we'll be back with new shows in January after the 25th, all right? So if you have anything you want me to see or talk about on these shows, write to me at harrywilmington@gmail.com. I'm Harry Wilmington, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.